Hi everybody, it's Think Differently Thursday again, and yeah, really good to be back. I'm Helen, this is the Forge Community Church, and I've got Nicky with me this afternoon. Hello Nicky.
Hi, Helen.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to see you and speak with you.
And you too, even though I've seen you a little bit in real life recently, but yeah, really nice to see you. For people that don't know you, just like give us a little tiny snippet just of who you are.
So I'm Nicky. I live in Ixworth and I'm married to Graham, and I've been part of the Forge Thurston congregation since it started. So
Fabulous. Is it Ixworth that has the really lovely, am I remembering right, Ixworth House? Is that out your way? Ixworth
are you
House.
thinking of Ickworth?
Ickworth, that's not you.
No,
No.
that's the other side of Bury. But that often happens.
That's it.
I moved into this house and we had new windows delivered, and the driver rang me and said, I'm really struggling. And I was like, right, describe where you are. And he's describing all these things. And I said, you're not in Ixworth, are you? And he went, no, I'm at Ickworth. I'm like, yeah, you're in completely the wrong place. It does often happen. Or people turn up in Ixworth looking for Ickworth House, and we're like, yeah, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. So is where you are, is that just quite a small village?
Yeah, it's a bit smaller than Thurston, but
Okay.
like everywhere around here, it's getting bigger. We've got two schools. We've got a primary school, and we had a middle school, which has now become a free school. So yeah, it's a good size, but yeah, it's probably smaller than Thurston, but a good sized village.
Okay. So Nicky, I've got to know you a little bit recently because, as you've said, we're part of the Forge together, and particularly because our daughters are very good friends as well. But I think over the years I've come across you more at Sizewell Hall, and that is a place, isn't it, that people will perhaps know a bit about, but it's played a big part in your life, hasn't it?
Yeah, I love Sizewell. Sizewell has a piece of my heart. I first went there when I was 13, and I was absolutely blown away by it. And
I wonder if we should explain. We ought to just explain what Sizewell is for people that perhaps don't know. Go on, you
yes, so
explain.
Sizewell Hall is a Christian conference centre, which is on the coast at Leiston, next to the Sizewell power station. And yeah, so different conferences and things and weekends and churches hire it. So the first time that I went there, the church that I attended always had a church weekend in January. And during the summer, there's camps down there, which I'm also involved with. So I cook on week 1 of junior camp and week 2 of family camp. So the first and the last weeks of camp, and a run where I've come across you, 2 women's conferences at Sizewell, one in March, one in October, for the East Anglian Women's, well, it's called Refresh now, but it used to be the East Anglian Women's Conference.
I'm a big fan of Refresh as a name for it.
Yes.
It sounds so much less formal than the East Anglian Women's Conference.
Yes, but it has been going for 50 odd years. So I suppose when it was set up, that was quite appropriate.
Yeah.
And then for a number of years, myself and my very good friend Ruth have done catering for church groups that go down there. So generally, it's been a good year. If I'm at Sizewell 8 or 9 times a year, I class that as a good year.
I did not realise that. In asking that question, I did not know that you were there. It's like your second home then, Nicky.
It is like my second home, yeah.
Wow.
And when I drive up, as soon as I get to the gate, so it's like, oh, I'm home.
Really? Oh, that's lovely. And of
Yeah,
course,
and
all
even
of those things, those camps and those weekends and all those things haven't been happening over this last year or so, have they? And in fact, I was thinking about it because I was at the ladies' weekend that you'd organised, which would have been back in March 19. And of course, coronavirus was becoming, very obviously around, but not to the degree that things had actually stopped. So we must have been one of the last things that happened at the hall, because that was beginning of March, I think, and then lockdown was end of March, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'm pretty certain. I think there might have been one more weekend after us, but certainly I know 2 weeks after us is usually the men's conference, and that was cancelled. So
Right.
yeah, we were one of the last, and but that was like a straight. Although you said there was like hand sanitizer and things like that,
Yeah.
we still it still felt like a long way away, didn't
Oh
it?
my
And
goodness. And I remember like coming into the rooms and you'd put notices out and maybe sanitizer in the rooms was there, and sort of, you know, this kind of like, if you can just be a bit vigilant and do this, and it seemed so alien, and it possibly even seemed a bit over the top. Do you know what I mean? Because we weren't coming across that at that stage in other places. But my goodness, we had no idea what was coming. And actually, you know, you were putting in place things that have become absolute commonplace since. Just incredible. And it, yeah. And certainly when I got to March of 20, I can remember saying to Kim, who I would usually go to the conference with, you know, this is the first time in I don't know how many years that we haven't gone to the conference. I really, yeah, I really missed it. Really felt it's lost. What is the latest? Where are you at as a committee with things returning and things picking up?
so yeah, so it's been a really difficult time. So going back to that last conference, I remember that actually a couple of ladies cancelled, and like
Right.
you, thinking, "Oh, that's a bit overkill." And one of our committee was very, very nervous about it all. And I don't know if you remember at communion that we had individual
Yeah.
wine glasses,
Yeah.
and she'd been out and bought 9 masks, and I remember that we pulled her leg terribly all that weekend.
Wow.
Little did we know that actually I've said to her, "Oh, you've got the gift of prophecy, because you saw what was coming."
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it's been really, really difficult. Sizewell has been closed until last week. Last week was the first
Okay.
time that they had a group back in.
Right.
So we've been waiting. We're hoping we might be able to do something in October, but
Okay.
the difficulty is you're trying to make decisions blindfold with
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your arms tied behind your back.
Yeah.
Also waiting to see what the latest guidance is going to be. If not, we definitely want to be back March 2022. But yeah, so at the moment we're just sort of we're exploring and looking, and we're not sure what people are going to feel either. I think some people will be really keen to come back.
Mm.
I think other people will be
Yeah.
very nervous.
I think with lots of things, and I think we even felt it. We had our second in-person service at church yesterday, didn't we? And I think people are really influenced by and kind of driven by what their experience has been. So if people have not seen many people and have not had reason to, if they're not having to go out to work, or if they've not needed to be at bigger things, I think it's such a big deal, isn't it? I think my
Mm.
experience is carrying on working and being in school, and various other things have meant that I've seen quite a lot of people. And so it doesn't feel such a big thing to me. But I think for those people, and I've got friends who are really quite anxious about any kind of bigger gathering. I think it's, yeah, it'll take time, won't it, for people?
Yeah, definitely it will. Yeah.
And where are Sizewell Hall at as well with it all? I mean, has the loss of revenue been a big thing? I know at one time during the last, can't remember when, year, there was a fundraiser. And I remember like just completely warmed my heart because so many people were giving. And I think that's a reflection on what people feel about Sizewell Hall, isn't it? I mean, was it touch and go? Was there a chance that actually the place couldn't keep going? What's it been?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been tough, for them. Obviously they've been able to tap into furlough, but yeah, they've had no income for
Mm,
the last 16
yeah,
months. And also, like with a building like that, you've still got to keep, it's an old hall. it's
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, so it's been tough.
yeah,
But as you
yeah,
say, they had a fundraiser. Lots of people I know have stepped in and are giving regularly. But bottom line, they need to get groups back in.
Yeah, so
And
they'll be
get,
pleased that people are starting to do that. And I know we as a church, I think our young people have got a weekend booked in as well, haven't they? So that's
yeah,
exciting.
in October, yes, hopefully I'll be cooking for that.
Great. So if in a normal year you would be at Sizewell so much, and I know that, you know, doing the women's conference, that's not just like hard work for that weekend. I know that's like a year of preparation. So all of that stuff taken away must have kind of left quite a big void in your life over this last year or so. Has that been hard, or has that been a sort of welcome break in a way?
I was thinking about this, and yeah, I mean, obviously I've missed it terribly, you know, being there, but actually it's been quite nice. You know,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong,
yeah, yeah,
I love doing it. I love being there. I love being involved, but I've quite enjoyed the pause, and just reevaluating and looking at everything. I don't
yeah,
think there's ever been another time in my life when I have evaluated everything quite like I have during COVID.
yeah,
And I think because it's been so different,
yeah.
it has made me sort of really think, well, you know, why am I doing this? What, you know, what is this? And yeah, I've quite enjoyed the space.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of, it's been enforced on us as well, isn't it? We would never necessarily have stopped lots of those things, but when we had no choice and they were stopped, it was interesting to work out what we were feeling, wasn't it? Have you read Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
No, but I've read Present Over Perfect.
Okay.
Great book.
Okay, maybe that's similar. Just that what you
Which,
were saying about, you know, pausing and reflecting and not doing everything so fast. Yes, it sounds like lots of the stuff that I read in Ruthless Elimination of Harry. You'd love it. You'd love it. It's a
yeah.
really great book. So what about, so that's some of those things that you do in life, but what about just more generally? We've lived through such a strange time over these last 16 months. How has it been for you guys? How has it been for the Thomases? Aren't you doing some building work or extending or something crazy in the middle of all this?
Yeah. So lockdown one, Jess, who is our middle daughter, who we'll no doubt talk about later on, who's in, some people will know, is out in South Africa with Hands at Work. She came back at the February half term for what we thought was 5 weeks. And then South Africa went into a lockdown, a strict lockdown, about a week, 10 days before we did. So there was the Sunday night, this grand panic. They were locking down on the Tuesday. Do we try and get her back? But the decision was made to stay here, and she ended up being here 8 months, I think it was. So yeah, so we went from suddenly, well, to begin with 5 of us, but then once we realised that these 4 weeks would keep going, Nathan moved in as well. So we had 6 of us in the house. And it was actually good fun.
Right.
Yeah, everyone was working from home. Josh's A-levels stopped overnight. Then Josh and Jess both got jobs. So Josh worked nights in Tesco's, Jess worked in a nursing home, and yeah, we really enjoyed. We played lots of games.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I remember hearing that you were doing lots of board games, and it was like good old fashioned family fun time together.
So that was really great. So that was lockdown one. We then managed. We had this window of about 10 days where we got Jess back to Africa in October. Josh went off to uni, and we'd been trying to move, but it just wasn't working out. And we thought, lockdown, this is not great. So we thought, okay, we've been here 24 years, we need to do some work on our house. So we booked builders in to start on the 2nd of November. On the Monday morning, Saturday, Boris announces that we're going into lockdown number 2 on Monday morning. So we phoned up, it was our friend, he was the builder, and he said, right, I've been looking, I think that we can still carry on. So that was a really strange time. So then Lauren moved out. Lauren moved the Bankses repaid the favour. She moved into their house,
Right.
and the builders moved in. And actually, it was strange. We said we saw more of the builders than we did of our. They became our adopted.
You swapped your children for the builders.
We swapped our children for the builders.
Did they play board games with you?
No, they didn't play board games, so that was a bit sad. And then actually the builder said, look, if you could move out, we could, you know, speed things up, because we were having a new kitchen, we were having a new bathroom upstairs, we were knocking 2 bedrooms into one, knocking down a wall between the dining room and that. So we ended up moving into Bury. So lockdown 2, we went from 6 in lockdown 1 to 2 of us, Graham and I and the dog, and we moved into a house in Bury, and then we moved back in 10 days before Christmas.
Oh, wow.
Josh came back from uni in that window where they could come back, and Lauren came back from the Bankses, Christmas Eve, I think, something like that. So
wow. So you've had a real mixed experience over the whole 16 months, lots of comings and goings. Are there things that you did or didn't do during lockdown that you kind of reflect on and you want to like really take forward into life at all?
Yeah, I think just the stopping and pausing. We really enjoyed. It was funny, last week Graham had a, well, he said, oh, I've had a really busy week, I can't cope. No, it's just the fact you've done something every day and every evening. That's normal life. We'd have been doing 2 or 3 things in an evening.
Yeah.
And,
so busy is a new definition then.
Yeah. So definitely, I think we're being a lot more careful about what we pick up and put
that's
back
really
in.
Good.
And so how long that will last, because I am known as somebody that says yes to things and then works out how I'm going to do it after I've said yes. But that's the plan anyway.
That so resonates with me, because I would say the same. You know, I've really enjoyed the sort of pausing and the slower pace and want to maintain it, but I can just at times feel myself, you know, looking at a day or a week and thinking, how am I going to do it all and get it all done? So it's holding on to it, isn't it, and putting it into practice and trying to stick with it. Good things to think about. So tell me, Nicky, a bit about your background. Are you a local girl, a Suffolk girl?
So I'm very much a Suffolk girl. My parents live in a village called Thelmethan, which is halfway between Diss and Bury. They live in the house that they moved into on the day they got married, the house that I was born in. My grandparents lived a few hundred yards down the road. My other grandparents lived in the next village with my auntie and uncle, and then my other auntie and uncle, they lived miles away. They lived in
You literally are the definition of what I think of as someone from Suffolk and people that I grew up with. So you sound like my best friend growing up. She had her sisters down the road, her grandparents, literally her nana was at the end of the road, her auntie lived next door to her nana, and so she grew up with cousins around her. That's typical of Suffolk people, I think. Sounds lovely though, really nice to have all those people around you.
Yeah, definitely. So family's always been important. Both my granddads were farmers. Well, you wouldn't call them farmers now, it was more like small holdings, but to me they were farmers. And it was a great life. So
Graham's not from Suffolk, is he? Graham's your husband. Where's he from?
No, so Graham is from North Arra in London. So that's where he was born. And his parents owned a newsagent, and then Graham's moved all around. So they then moved from there to Bournemouth, and they ran a Christian hotel. So Graham's sort of teenage years were spent working in the hotel in the evenings and weekends. Then they moved from there to Tunbridge Wells, and Graham got a job with NatWest working in London. So he's working on Westminster Bridge for the fraud office for NatWest. And then Graham's mum and dad, he was still living at home, decided that they'd move up to Norfolk because that's where Graham's brother and their grandchildren were. So Graham moved from working in London on Westminster Bridge to Dis. I mean, you couldn't get a bigger cultural shock, really. But he loves it now, and he wouldn't move because I wouldn't move anyway. But he loves it. So
presumably that's how you guys got together then, because he came to Suffolk. How did you actually meet?
Yeah, so we actually met at Sizewell. So I went to the same church as his brother, his older brother, and every summer our church had a youth camp down at Sizewell, and one of Graham's brothers was one of the leaders, and Graham came down to visit, and my first memory of him is on the other side of a volleyball net giving me abuse and banter, and whilst we were playing volleyball.
Flirting.
Well, see, he remembers it slightly different than me. I was 15. My best friend at the time was like, thought he was amazing and fallen in love with him. I was that bit gawky 15-year-old thinking, oh, no one's going to take any notice of me. So I don't remember. He apparently said he noticed me. Then a few weeks later came up to Suffolk. We went after church on a Sunday. The youth used to always get together. We went for a walk. I can't remember this, but we apparently ended up walking next to each other. He was asking what I was doing, and I said, oh, I'm sitting with my exams. He said, oh, what A-levels? I went, no, GCSEs. And he's like, how old are you? And I'm like, 15, because Graham is 7 years older than me, you see. So he's like, okay. Backed off a bit. So so it was then another good year and a half before I was 16 when we started going out. So
and he kept a candle burning for you all that time.
Well, you say that, Helen, but I think he had 2 or 3 other girlfriends in between.
But none of them reached the standard of you, clearly. That's what I'm thinking there.
Yeah.
That's a nice story. That's lovely. Yeah. How long have you been married now then?
So it will be 30 years this year. So we started going out when I was 16, got engaged when I was 17, got married the day after my 19th birthday.
Did you? Wow. That seems young now, doesn't it? I mean, it was normal, wasn't it? It was pretty normal, but it seems so young, doesn't it?
Oh, well, literally, Kirsty said to me, she said, I would put in a safeguarding referral if that had been now. she said, I said, yeah, I mean, it does. And when I'm looking at my own daughters, I was thinking, what were my parents doing? Letting us, get engaged when I was 17 and married. It seemed ridiculous. Yeah. And I think actually my girls felt a pressure about that as well, because they're like, oh, you met dad at 16 and you've been married all these years. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what worked for us. That doesn't mean to say that that's, but
these are very different times, aren't they? But yes, that is amazing. Congratulations. I think that's really something to be married for 30 years. I've just realised that we've mentioned Lauren about 3 or 4 times, and we haven't mentioned the big news. You mentioned Nathan as well. So Nathan, who I spoke to on here a couple of weeks ago, is engaged to your Lauren.
I know.
This is a whole new phase of life, Nicky. This is this is a new stage, a child that is getting married.
I know. It was really right. We were obviously thrilled. We love Nathan. He's great. He fits in really well with our family, and it was really, and so very exciting. We knew he came. He did it all right. He came and asked permission. He took Graham out for lunch. He asked for permission, and I always thought that I wanted to know. And Graham obviously did tell me. But it was so hard because it was about 2 weeks before, keeping it quiet. I was like inside, and tell people. So that was really tricky. And then suddenly, I think a couple of people texted me and said, "Oh, mother of the bride." And then I suddenly I felt quite terrified. Yeah, because I thought, oh heck, yes.
Yes, this is your role now. Are you in
Yeah.
full kind of wedding prep mode?
Well, not quite at the moment, because we are waiting on them to come up with a date.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
in their defence, lots of people have deferred weddings
Yeah.
to next year. So they're trying to find a venue at the moment. They've actually got some holiday this week coming, so we're hoping that we'll have a date, and then we can start. Also, trying not to get, trying to let them, or gently
Yeah.
coaxing them.
Yeah, and isn't this the thing with life loads? I think with parenting, I think, you get used to a stage. I think this has been parenting like from the very beginning. You get used to a stage and you get comfortable with it, and then it changes, and then it changes all the time.
Yes,
So you've got a new change now. And like you say, not one that you've had experience of before. You've got to find your role in it, haven't you? What does mother of the bride, mother-in-law to be,
exactly.
what does that look like?
I know, and that's terrified me as well. I suddenly, I'm going to be someone's mother-in-law, and I'm like, I did say to Graham the other night, I said, I'm really worried. I said, I don't want to be one of these horrible mother-in-laws.
Because they do get bad press, don't they, mother-in-laws, as if they're dragons.
They do, and I was like, oh,
They're
so,
not.
but no. So yes, it's very exciting. But as you say, a whole new
Role. So do you think there'll be a big hat for you on the day?
Well, I love hats on everybody else, but
Oh,
I actually have quite a large head, and I struggle to find a hat that fits. I know
really?
yes, something that I've inherited from my dad. He also struggles to find a hat that fits. So I don't know. I don't know whether it's going to be a fascinator or a hat. I think I'm going to have to chat to Debbie, see what she's doing.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
yes.
exciting. Very exciting. I'm looking forward to all the Instagram pictures and stories.
Yeah. With Jess that there'll be plenty of those.
So tell me about, you've said that you are part of the Forge, and I know that you're a Christian, and so much of the things that you've described that you do are really influenced by your faith. So tell me about your faith journey. Was Christianity introduced to you really early on?
So my parents aren't Christians,
Okay.
so I didn't have any particular church influence. I think even when I was at primary school, I certainly believed in God, or thought that there was a God.
Where had that come from then? Where had that belief come from?
I don't know. I suppose it's like, I went to a Church of England school.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I always thought that, I think there's a God. I didn't really know what that meant.
Right.
And the real changing point for me is when I was 12. My granddad dropped down dead from a heart attack, and I can still remember vividly now, my mum asking me to go next door to tell our neighbours, because I say my grandparents only lived a few houses away, so they would know them. And I remember coming back through, we had a gap in the hedge where we nipped through, and I remember thinking that I was never going to see him again in eternity, and that seemed such a long time, and then that had to be something that couldn't just be it. That couldn't just, he was a really important part of my life, and he was gone, and surely that's not all there is. So that was definitely for me the start of thinking about faith. Then my next door neighbours, the three kids next door, they were slightly older than me, and they went to the local church youth group. And there was a thing called Teens on a Saturday night, which was like a youth thing, but you had to be 13. I'm an August birthday, the 30th of August.
Oh, so you're so young in the year.
So annoying. And so I remember that they let me go in the summer term when I was still 12, but so I went along to that, absolutely loved it, because where we lived there was no buses. My mum didn't learn to drive until I was well into primary school, and she wasn't terribly confident, so she never drove us about anywhere. So we were quite, stuck. But having older neighbours who could, drive and things was cool, and so they took me to that, and then that started. Then there was a Friday night. It was called Youth Fellowship, so twice a week we did that, and that was more of a Bible study based thing, which was all kind of new to me, but but it was great. It was there was about 30 or 40 young people. It was a great experience, and then they started then taking me to church on a Sunday night, and I was 13, and I can remember the preacher vividly was talking about the seed, the good seed, and the seed that fell on the path. And it was one of those experiences where it just felt like it was him and me in the room, and he was just talking directly at me. And this shows my age. He had a tract, a booklet at the end of the service, and he said, anybody that wants one, please come and get one. And being the brave 13-year-old that I was, I tapped my friend who's sitting next to me, and she wasn't very brave. She tapped the next person next to her until it got to the end of the line, where one of their boyfriends was brave enough to go and get me a booklet and brought it back. And normally after church, we had a young people's gathering, and normally I loved going to that rather than going back home, but this night I just wanted to get back home. I just wanted to get back home and read this booklet. And that night I read the booklet, and I prayed the prayer and became a Christian at the age of 13. And then I got baptized when I was 16.
Wow.
So
that's really interesting to be able to really pinpoint and to remember so clearly that experience that built up to that actual decision. Lots of people find that it's quite a gradual thing that they kind of accept over time, but that's really lovely. How was that received by your parents then? If they weren't Christians, I guess they'd been okay with you going along to church and getting involved, but was that actual decision, was that hard for them, or were they okay?
It was really, really hard, in particular for my mum. I think she'd got the smoking, drinking, pregnancy, all those talks ready, but was completely blindsided by a 13-year-old daughter coming home and saying, I've become a Christian. And she was actually quite cross. I think she
been happy with you going along to stuff, but was it that you became, this was a commitment thing?
Yeah, I think to begin with, she was happy for me to go. And I think probably when I started going to church on a Sunday, it's really interesting. I remember once having a discussion with her. She was quite cross that I'd gone to church with bare arms. She felt that when you're in church, you should cover your arms. And but I think she then wondered, what is this thing that she's been sucked into? And I remember her quite strongly saying to me, don't you be coming home and preaching to me. And so actually, for a long time, I never mentioned it with her. Now, interestingly, sort of over the years, that they've become much more comfortable. They've been to lots of things at that church. I think when grandchildren came along, they came to, and they actually now feel very comfortable. But it was difficult, because that, I think, that completely blindsided them. They weren't expecting that their daughter was going to find God. And it was tricky, for a little while. Tricky.
Yeah. And I think Christianity is quite different to lots of faiths or religions in that what's central to it is this relationship with God. You said, their daughter found God. And it's something that as Christians we need to maintain, don't we? That relationship side of our belief. So how do you do that? Because it obviously wasn't a decision at 13 that was just something that stopped. How have you over the years, and how do you even now ensure that you still keep growing in that faith?
I think again, looking back, I think I now realise and appreciate we had an amazing youth leader. And now when I think about it, he was married, he had twin boys that were 3 or 4 years younger than me. He worked full time. He was an elder in the church, and he ran the youth group every Saturday night.
Wow.
In term time, and on a Friday night as well. So yeah, definitely good practices that I picked up then, probably more now. And I think lockdown really showed me this. I think, as I've said, I like doing things, and I think this came out of the the emotional healthy course that we did. I'm definitely a doer.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, if I'm honest, I probably got a bit into the habit that my Sundays going to church were my fix to get me through the week.
Yeah.
And suddenly when that's all taken away, so I definitely in lockdown made a real big thing. I used the Bible app. I'm doing the Bible in 1 year at the moment, which is the first time I've ever got this far, because normally I fail after about a month.
Right, you're doing well. You're over halfway.
I'm over halfway. Yeah, I might be a week or two behind, but I'm still going.
Yeah.
So that was really, really important. Groups were really important. Again, I think from my old church, that was something that was instilled in us. Quite early on in our marriage, we were always part of a group, and I think particularly in lockdown, our group, we said it became church for us. We were a church. That's really important. Running mates, I think is really important. I do go to women's conferences and things like that, and read Christian books. I think it's really important.
So it's loads and loads of different ways of having input into your life.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's really interesting, Nicky, and just so heartwarming as well, because I think what you described at the beginning there about actually realizing that going to church and doing that Sunday thing had become what your relationship with God almost looked like, but realizing that you needed to do something about it, realizing that you needed to put things in place and invest in that yourself. It's just so brilliant, because I think you can go one of two ways with that, can't you? You can kind of walk away because the thing that has kept you connected and attached to faith is taken away, that I think it's so easy to then drift off. And I think we've seen that with some people. So to have gone the other way and just kind of reflected on it and done something about it, I think is brilliant, really brilliant. So good for people to hear, I think. You kind of come to mind for me as a family for whom it's difficult. So for people that don't know, we've been a 3-location church and currently have gone down to 1 location, and have just begun meeting together in 1 location, and it's a long way away from where you were meeting for church, isn't it? And I know I chatted with you and Graham, and it's hard, isn't it? It's not something that is easy, that decision, and I guess that's ongoing. How is that kind of settling or feeling with you guys now?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I think, as we said to you at the time, you don't expect the church to move. You think that maybe at some point you might move, but so it was really sad. But I think also, as I've said to you, and I think we've also said to our small group, it should be sad, because we were invested in it, and it was an important part of our life. So and it's not wrong. I think sometimes as Christians we think we shouldn't be sad, but actually it's okay to be sad. It's what we do, it's with that sadness. And and I think as well, again, lots has been said about lamenting, and that was something that I didn't really understand much about, but again I've explored and looked into a bit more. So I think where we're at the moment, that just waiting. Again, you know, we felt really strongly that God wanted us to come to the Forge at Thurston, and definitely, you know, so many things that we can see that that's the right thing. So yeah, we're just sort of waiting to see what's next. It was interesting because several years ago when we first came to the Forge at Debenham, after the girls have been to camp and we met all these amazing friends, can we go to this amazing church? And I remember like getting up, because that was when you were like meeting early, and I think we left our house at something like 8:30 or something ridiculous, and we're trying to get 3 teenagers out of the house on a Sunday morning, and it just sent such a long journey. And I've never been great traveling, and I felt car sick. I said to Graham, never, can't come here. But actually, interestingly, the last 2 Sundays that we've met in person, I think because I've been involved with the Moses Project, and that's based at Stonham, it doesn't, because I'm doing that every week, it came as far as what in my head I mean, it's still obviously not ideal. It's not 5 miles down the road like it was before, but it hasn't felt as bad as what I thought it was going to be.
That's interesting, isn't it? Journeys, the more you do them, I think the less you think about them, and they don't seem so far at times. So I think you know, we both said, well, let's just sit in this for a while and see what happens, and see where it goes. Really. I completely understand that. You just mentioned coming over to Stonham for the Moses Project, which I know is a real key role for you at the church at the moment. Do you want to just kind of explain what the Moses Project is? It's such a wonderful thing that you do.
So the Moses Project get referrals from professionals, midwives, health visitors, teachers, for families that are struggling, maybe to provide things for a baby, families, women that are suffering domestic abuse, or, you know, or just struggling financially. So we provide a Moses basket, and it's filled with items, so nappies, toiletries, basically everything that you could think that they would need: sheets, blankets, cotton wool, clothes, vests, baby grows, outfits, cardigans. So it's crammed full of stuff that we give out to families that are struggling. So
it's just such a wonderful thing that you do, and I just love that it's part of what our church is. I think you know, we can put on great services and they're really important, but this business of not reaching out to people and trying to convey what the Christian message is, or trying to persuade them to come to things that we do, but just actually demonstrating love, seeing where there's a need, seeing where people are vulnerable and they need some help, and stepping in and giving it, just so reflects who God is and what we want to be seen as Christians and as the church. Is just wonderful. I think it's such a great thing that you do. Is it emotional at times, because these people that you're giving them to are people that have got a story and are in need? Do you find it emotional?
I think sometimes when I read the referrals that come in, I think in January when it snowed, obviously we were in lockdown, so that's obviously made everything much trickier. And Graham actually came out with me to help me deliver, and we delivered to a family where the mum was sleeping on the floor with a baby. And I'm thinking, we're in 2021 in Suffolk. Why is this still happening? How have we got? So, sometimes that, but other times I just, we've just had so many lovely stories. So the other thing, when Rebecca, it's Rebecca Dyer that set it up initially, did lots of research, and midwives were telling us that women were turning up to hospital. And we had this a few months ago, where she was actually an Eastern European worker that had come over, said that she didn't realise that she was pregnant. We're not 100% convinced, but anyway, was there 2 weeks and then got taken to hospital. And when she arrived at hospital, all she had was her phone and a charger. And midwives were telling us that, that more and more women were turning up at hospital without, sanitary pads and breast pads and all those sorts of things. So also in the basket, we put a wash bag that's mum to take into hospital. So it's got, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo. We put in breast pads, we put in maternity pads, and all those sorts of things. And, you sort of wonder, well, yeah, there is a need, because as I say, this mum turned up, but we then got some feedback. So Choices is a charity, a shop that does secondhand clothes, and they've been a great supporter for us. And they've got a sign in the shop, and the lady that runs it rang me one day, and she said, I just wanted to tell you this story. She said there was a grandmother and a daughter in the shop, and the grandmother looked at the sign and saw the Moses Project, and she turned to the lady and she said, oh, this is such an amazing thing. She said, my daughter got into trouble, and she said, they provided her with a basket, and she said, and there was everything that she could want for the baby, and that was amazing. She said, but the thing that blew me away was that there was a bag, they thought about her as well, and there was a wash bag, and there were pads, and there were things. And she said, the fact that they saw her, and that they, and that's what we hope. That's what we hope when we take the baskets out, that it's not going to solve a lot of the problems, but we hope that at least they know that we see them, and that they're loved, and that they're important. And so that was really, that was such a, she said, I wanted to ring you, I wanted to tell you that, people,
and isn't that so rewarding that people that we don't necessarily know are talking about it and telling somebody else what their experience within their own family has been? That does sound really rewarding. It's amazing. Well done. It's such a great thing. Have you got sort of hopes and dreams for the future of the Moses Project? Do you think about what next for it?
Yeah, so Rebecca has now stepped down, but she's been very kind. So currently we ran out of Rebecca's garage, and she's been very kind, very gracious, and let us stay there. But we need to find a new home. We also found in lockdown, say that we had a few families, particularly domestic violence families, where we would turn up with a basket on the doorstep, and it would become very apparent that they had very little else. So we started teaming up with John, and then referring people to the furniture bank. So that's definitely something that we'd like to do more of. And also, a Moses basket is great, but if you have a big baby, or even any baby, it's not in there actually very long. So we'd like to be able to, again, working with John, to maybe have a bank of cots that we could send out. And also the amazing Audrey, who is my right-hand woman and is amazing. She's saying, I think in Debenham, isn't there a pop-up shop? And she's saying that, every week people are coming, and that's our experience as well. Nappies and milk, they're expensive. And I know that Lauren's always had this thing that we'd like to maybe do some sort of follow-on, because as I say, at the moment we just have closed 0 to 3 months. So we've got there's lots of ideas and things, but our biggest thing at the moment is we need a new home. So so we're praying for that at the moment. But I think there's definitely a need. I think more and more. I think COVID has brought that to the front. I think when the furlough scheme finally finishes, I think it's going to have a huge impact on families as well, and the changes with the universal credit and things like this, the top up that's being withdrawn. The need's going to get more, because babies are going to keep coming, COVID or no COVID. So So
Oh,
that's, yeah, so we'd like to expand, but yeah.
it's really good to hear from you and just hear a bit more about what being part of the Moses Project entails, and yeah, what your hopes are for the future as well. Maybe there's people listening that might be able to help in some way as well. You do sound like you are really busy, and it sounds like there's not loads of free time. I was going to kind of say, like, as our kids get older, we've got more free time, but if you do find some time, what else fills it for you? Else do you do?
So when 2 years, when Jess first went off to Africa, I was a teaching assistant, but I came out of school. Although since then I've been back 2 or 3 times. But anyway, that's another story. But I wanted to do something different, and so I'd heard about the charity Home Start. I think it was one of those ridiculous things. One day I was lighting the fire, crunching up newspaper, and I saw this big advert. And then I think the next week it was on the Forge feed. And I'm a great believer that when things come up 2 or 3 times, that maybe God's prompting or nudging. So I looked into that. And that's a great charity to work for. So Home Start support families with children up to the age of 12. Anyone can refer themselves to them, and so I'm a home visit volunteer. So they give you training, and then basically there's a paid job with the coordinator. Referrals come in, and then they match up volunteers with families, and so anybody, as long as you've had, the only criteria is that you must have had children yourself.
Right.
And then it's my job to you just go and support them, and and that's been great. So it's usually weekly visit, and I sort of thought, I've got to go in there with all these answers to help. But actually, what I'm finding more and more and more is that 9 times out of 10 people just want somebody to talk to and just want you to listen.
I think that's so often the way. People don't want you to solve things, just to be alongside.
Yeah. And so that's been great. And also within that as well, I've been doing this thing called Lena, which is a communication program, which again they train you up for, and that's a 12-week program. So every week it's 30 minutes, and it's just looking at how we communicate with children, and again encouraging. I've just finished that with a family, and it's been such amazing to see the difference. Most of the women that are referred are probably struggling with anxiety, depression, and things like that, and it's just going alongside them and just encourage them, and again just telling them you're doing a great job. And I think it's so hard, I think particularly for this generation, the Instagram, all the time I'm saying to them that you're seeing a snapshot of someone's highlight reel.
Yes.
And and the reality is that whilst this is the most amazing job, it's also very hard. It's very hard being a parent, and some days it's boring and monotonous, and and hard. And so that's it's really
sounds really rewarding.
You get to play with children, and then you get to leave them.
Sounds great. Oh, Nicky, it's been really, really great to chat to you and to find out a bit more about all the things that you're involved in. And it just sounds like so many of those areas, you're just such an encouragement to other people, and just so empathetic. And I think the way you're using your time is just lovely. I've got one last question, and it kind of ties in with this whole idea of parenting and so much of what we've spoken about, really. As you say, I think parenting is really hard, and I think it changes all the time. And I think if we were beginning all over again with babies, I think we would discover that actually, you know, the advice that's given, I was talking to a friend about this recently, the way people are told to do it now is totally different to the way we did it. Because I do often think, you know, I'd be really good at it if I did it again now, because I've got all this like experience. I could give it a really good go now. I think the first time round I just got through it really. What would you do differently if you were starting now? If you were having your babies now, what would you do differently?
Oh, well, first of all, I'm glad that I haven't had my babies now, because I think you're right. I think they know too much. You know, my first home start family that I went to go and support. I mean, this mum knew an amazing amount, and I was thinking, I didn't even know half of that. I was quite naive.
Mm,
I
mm,
just muddled my way through.
mm,
So yeah, so in some ways I'm glad that I'm not. But
mm,
the only thing that I think, looking back, which I quite like, which people do now, is, you know, especially having 3 kids, they just sort of came as a collective. And I wish I'd spent, you know, people now are very intentional, aren't they? And maybe taking one child and having some quality time with that one child.
yeah.
And I think that's the only thing that I think, yeah, I would have done differently. And I wouldn't have got so hung up on getting things done. I was talking to one of my other families the other day, and that was with the Lena program, and talking about communicating. And I was saying, like, nappy changing and things like that. Sometimes we can get so focused on the task and we've got to get through and get it done, but actually it's a really sociable time, and it's a really
Mm,
good time to engage with your child and have communication. And I think sometimes I was just more focused on getting things
mm,
done, and I'd be a bit more chilled. And definitely I realized this when Josh went to university, that the hardest thing for me was when I went past his bedroom for the first 2 weeks, and the bedroom floor was immaculate. And for years, you know, that, you know what it's like with teenage boys, that they use their bedroom floor to file everything clean, dirty, and, you know, and nagging and all of this lot. And it really struck me, and suddenly that's just not important anymore.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think I try and be a bit more chilled, and and not worry about,
yeah,
yeah, if it's the house is in a tip or whatever, because it's a cliche, but it's true. It goes
goes,
so quickly,
yeah, definitely.
and yeah, it really does.
Next thing
The
you know,
days
they
are long, but the years go quickly.
and then the next thing you know, they're getting married and you're going to be the mother of the bride.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great advice. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for all those things that you do for our church that make such a massive difference, particularly all that stuff you're doing with the Moses Project as well. It's such an incredible thing. Yeah, we're really grateful to you, and I'm really grateful for your time tonight. Thanks for chatting to me and sharing your story, which has been really, really lovely. So thanks, Nicky.
Thank you.
See you very soon, no doubt. See ya. Bye.
Bye.